Hello everyone and welcome to RadioCSIRT English Edition, your daily appointment with cybersecurity news. I'm Marc-Frédéric Gomez, your French cybersecurity voice for today's threat landscape. It's Black Friday, November 28th, 2025. You're listening to episode 34, live from Valence, from France. Coming up in this episode, security researchers are flagging a critical surge in spyware campaigns, targeting encrypted messaging platforms like Signal and WhatsApp. Attacks are leveraging zero-click exploits in Samsung image parsing libraries and weaponizing linked device features via malicious QR codes. These operations specifically target high-value government personnel to bypass end-to-end encryption and exfiltrate device data. In a strategic shift for software architecture, the Linux Foundation has launched ORCA, the Open Robust Compartmentalization Alliance, acknowledging that reactive patching is insufficient against AI-driven threats. ORCA aims to standardize software compartmentalization. The goal is to physically isolate software components to contain the blast radius of any exploit, effectively operationalizing zero trust at the code level. On the vulnerability front, Cisco Talos has disclosed severe flaws across 3 vendors. The most critical is a hard-coded password in Dell ControlVault, CVE 2025-31649, allowing privilege escalation. Also patched are a type confusion vulnerability in the Lasso library affecting SAML assertions, and a firmware downgrade flaw in GL.iNet routers exploitable via man-in-the-middle attacks on OTA updates. Regarding threat actors, Brian Krebs has de-anonymized Ray, the lead operator of Scattered Lapsus Hunters. The 16-year-old Jordanian national suffered a catastrophic OPSEC failure after his personal device was compromised by an info stealer. The group had recently pivoted to a ransomware as a service model with ShinySP1D3R, an AI-modified fork of the Hellcat ransomware. Meanwhile, Polish internal security services have detained a Russian national operating under refugee status. The suspect is accused of breaching an online retailer to manipulate database integrity. A move Warsaw links to a broader Russian hybrid warfare campaign involving physical sabotage and arson across the EU. Finally, the Tor project is deploying a major cryptographic upgrade, switching to the Counter-Galois Onion CGO algorithm. This new standard introduces immediate forward secrecy by rotating keys after every transmitted cell and utilizes wide block encryption to render the network resilient against tagging attacks and traffic analysis. The CISA and multiple intelligence units have flagged a coordinated surge in commercial spyware operations. These campaigns are surgically targeting encrypted platforms like Signal and WhatsApp, aiming specifically at high-value targets in government and defense sectors. Let's break down the technical mechanics because the sophistication here is extremely high. The primary threat vector we are seeing is zero-click exploitation. The Landfall campaign is the prime example here. Attackers are leveraging CVE 2025-21042, a critical vulnerability in the image processing libraries of Samsung devices. Here is how it executes. A weaponized DNG image file is sent over a messaging app. The moment the OS parses this file for preview, without any user interaction, it triggers a heap overflow, allowing remote code execution. This effectively bypasses end-to-end encryption by compromising the endpoint itself. Parallel to these exploits, we are seeing a rise in logic-based attacks. Threat actors are bypassing software vulnerabilities entirely by abusing the linked devices feature found in most messaging apps. Through social engineering and malicious QR codes, they trick victims into authorizing an attacker-controlled device. This creates a persistent, synchronized shadow session that mirrors all communications in real time. Because this uses legitimate app protocols, it is invisible to most standard mobile threat defense solutions. So, what is the takeaway for defenders? Patch management for mobile fleets is now a critical priority to close those image parsing vulnerabilities. Furthermore, you need to educate your high-risk users on session hygiene. Regularly auditing linked devices within the apps is mandatory. Moving forward, enforcing hardware-based FIDO2 authentication is the only robust barrier against these account takeover techniques. Stay safe and check your logs. More analysis on my blog.marcfredericgomez.com. The Linux Foundation has officially launched ORCA, the Open Robust Compartmentalization Alliance, aiming to fundamentally shift how critical software is secured. This initiative acknowledges a strategic failure in current defense models. Reactive patching can no longer keep pace with the speed and volume of automated AI-driven threats. Technically, ORCA focuses on standardizing software compartmentalization. The methodology involves breaking down monolithic software stacks into secure, isolated boundaries. Instead of a flat architecture where one exploit can grant system-wide access, this model ensures that a vulnerability in a single component is physically and logically contained within its specific execution environment. For the industry, this represents the operationalization of the assume breach mentality at the code level. By limiting the blast radius of any single fault, ORCA intends to make resilience an architectural default. With backing from major hardware vendors and cloud providers, we anticipate these isolation primitives will soon become requirements in the supply chain, shifting the focus from preventing entry to rigorously containing execution. Cisco Talos has disclosed a significant set of vulnerabilities, starting with critical flaws in Dell's ControlVault2, the hardware-based security solution designed to handle user authentication. Researchers identified 5 distinct issues, the most egregious being CVE 2025-31649, which involves a hard-coded password within the system. By leveraging a specially crafted API call, an attacker can bypass security controls to execute privileged operations. Additionally, a buffer overflow vulnerability was found in the ControlVault API, opening the door to arbitrary code execution directly on the security hardware meant to protect the endpoint. Moving to identity infrastructure, the Lasso C library, widely used for handling single sign-on and federated identities, is also compromised. The most severe issue here is a type confusion vulnerability triggering during the parsing of SAML responses. An attacker sending a malformed SAML packet can trigger arbitrary code execution. Given Lasso's role in authentication flows, this represents a critical risk to identity provider systems utilizing this library. Finally, a specific threat for mobile workforces using the GL.iNet Slate X travel router, Talos discovered a flaw in the over-the-air update mechanism that permits firmware downgrade attacks. An adversary performing a man-in-the-middle attack can inject a crafted archive file to force the router to revert to an older, vulnerable firmware version. This effectively undoes previous security patches, re-exposing the device to known exploits. Patches are available for all 3 vendors and should be deployed immediately. Polish internal security services have detained a Russian national accused of executing cyber operations against local infrastructure, marking another escalation in Warsaw's counterintelligence struggle against Moscow. The suspect, who was operating under refugee status obtained after illegally crossing the border in 2022, is charged with breaching the IT systems of a major online retailer. Technically, this incident is significant because it involves database manipulation rather than simple exfiltration. The attacker gained unauthorized access to modify critical records, an integrity attack designed to disrupt business continuity and potentially endanger customers. This arrest is not an isolated cybercrime event, but part of a coordinated hybrid warfare campaign. It follows Prime Minister Donald Tusk's report of 32 similar arrests involving sabotage and arson, and the recent closure of Russian diplomatic missions linked to kinetic attacks on railways and commercial centers. This highlights the convergence of cyber intrusions and physical sabotage orchestrated by state-affiliated actors within the EU. The Tor project has announced a critical architectural upgrade, replacing its legacy Tor1 relay encryption with a new standard designated Counter-Galois Onion or CGO. This move directly addresses structural vulnerabilities in the network's design, specifically the reliance on AES-CTR encryption without hop-by-hop authentication. This legacy architecture allowed for malleable encryption, enabling sophisticated adversaries to execute tagging attacks, where traffic is modified between relays to de-anonymize users via covert channels. CGO mitigates these risks by implementing a rugged pseudo-random permutation, RPRP, construction known as UIV+. Technically, This delivers a dual-layer defense. First, it introduces wide block encryption with tag chaining. Any tampering with a packet now destroys the integrity of the entire cell and all subsequent ones, effectively killing the circuit and blocking traffic analysis. Second, it establishes immediate forward secrecy by rotating encryption keys after every single cell, rather than reusing keys for the circuit's duration. By also deprecating the weak 4-byte SHA-1 authenticator in favor of a 16-byte standard, Tor is significantly raising the cost of surveillance and interception for hostile actors. Brian Krebs has successfully unmasked Ray, the lead operator behind the Scattered Lapsus Hunters, SLSH, identifying him as a 16-year-old national operating out of Jordan. This exposure underscores the persistent trend of juvenile actors driving high-profile cyber extortion campaigns. Technically, SLSH operates as an amalgamation of tactics from Lapsus, Solar, Scattered Spider, and Shiny Hunters. The group has recently escalated its operations by launching a proprietary ransomware as a service platform named Shiny Spyware D3R, which appears to be an AI-modified fork of the Hellcat ransomware source code. Their primary vector remains high-touch social engineering, specifically targeting Salesforce environments via malicious OAuth apps and aggressively recruiting corporate insiders for credential access. The de-anonymization process reveals a catastrophic OPSEC failure. The operator's personal device was infected by a commodity info stealer. Threat intelligence researchers correlated these leaked logs with a screenshot Ray posted on Telegram regarding a sextortion email he received. This allowed investigators to pivot from a reused password and a visible Proton Mail domain directly to his real-world identity. Ray now claims to be cooperating with law enforcement agencies following the Operation Endgame crackdowns. And that's the end of this Black Friday episode. I hope it provided clear and useful information. And if you are a new listener, feel free to subscribe to the podcast. We are available on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, YouTube channel, Deezer, and Spotify. You can share your feedback by email at RadioCSIRT@gmail.com. All open source intelligence sources used for this episode are available on RadioCSIRT.com website, as well as in the episode description. See you tomorrow for a new episode. Until then, don't think, just patch. Bye.